Hi, Thomas, or Tom, or how is it pronounced right?
I'm Polish, so it's actually Tomasz, but Thomas is fine. So
Okay,
hi,
Tomasz.
Adam. Mhm.
Hi, Tomasz. What was your first computer?
As far as I remember, or honestly, I do remember quite well, it was 486 with 8 megabytes of RAM. I actually started quite late. It was 1997. And first of all, I was doing some gaming, but then I quickly realized that there are these files called BAT, which were DOS scripts. And that's how my story with computer programming started with, yeah, that's basically it. So 486, 8 megabytes of RAM and 324 megabytes of hard drive. I have no idea how I remember it, but somehow you have this feeling to your first computer.
Yeah, and why you got it?
As always, I was a child, so parents thought that I will be using it for learning or something, but still I quickly discovered computer gaming. But nevertheless, programming was the thing. So first there was a computer with some gaming, and then I started. I don't know if you remember, there was this computer programming language for children called Logo
Yes.
or Turtle Graphics, and I love it. I was like totally blown away how easily you can do some graphics, to the point that actually my master's thesis was re-implementation of the language. So I built the compiler from scratch for the Logo language. So that was a pretty cool experience,
It's
and that's
actually
how it all
amazing.
started.
So, first, what interests me, what was your favorite game back then? As
Actually, it was Settlers 1 and 2, which I believe is a German game, and it was kind of going the steep downhill with more with subsequent versions. But Settlers 1 and 2 was kind of the pinnacle of what they did. So it's a real-time strategy with strong emphasis on economy. I honestly loved like building these settlers cities and conquering the other countries. So that was amazing.
oh, and how old were you as you got your first computer?
1997. So how was it? 12? I was 12, around 12. Yeah.
Okay, so it was amazing. So and the shooter games, you were not into shooting with 12?
Oh, I were. So I remember it was Wolfenstein 3D.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. So Wolfenstein 3D, then long nothing, and then Half-Life, which I kind of rediscovered 10 years after it was published. So that's
Ah,
pretty
okay.
much it. I'm not really into gaming these days. There are maybe just a handful of games I actually enjoy playing, but there are a few that I always come back with a lot of emotions.
So very good. So you are not like a prodigy child who just likes to play strategy game and hates shooter games. So you actually played everything and you like Zietler, right?
No, come on, it was 486, so everything that could run on this computer was
Yeah,
fine. So
cool.
it just so happened that I happened to have these two games. I somehow managed to convince my mother to buy me Settlers 2.
Cool.
There were no online shops, so we had to buy it via phone. That was really weird times.
Where was it in Poland?
I used to live in a small town in Poland, like 2 hours from Warsaw. Now I live in Warsaw.
Oh,
So the only way to like buy a game was to order it via phone.
okay.
So that was interesting, but nevertheless, I managed to get a computer and playing the Settlers game. It actually took me quite some time. I think I had to expand the amount of memory the computer had, because it wasn't capable of running all the maps. It was really strange, because when you were picking a map where you want to run it, which you want to run, and it was actually saying that you don't have enough RAM to load this particular one. There were some tricks like do not load all the assets, and then you maybe had a way to run it. So that was really cool.
Cool.
These were
I'm
interesting
asking
times.
about where are you from, because once I had a conference in Gdańsk, Danzig, and
Hmm.
there was a fog, so the airplane went back to Posen, and then
Yep.
I went by car from Posen to Danzig, and then the back was the same story. So I rent a car and went from Danzig to Warsaw through half of Poland.
Quite far away.
Yeah, but it was actually a nice trip. But yeah, it was an amazing story actually. But yeah, so sometimes on the way, could I meet you in your town, or was it complete different direction?
No, it's more like Eastern Poland. So
Ah,
it
Eastern.
wasn't
Okay,
far away, but it's more like Eastern Poland. Yeah.
cool.
Actually, I think I've been to the same conference. Was it InfoShare in Gdańsk?
Exactly. It was the
Yeah,
InfoShare.
so I think we've been to the same conference. I was also giving a talk there. All right.
Cool. So about the batch files, how quickly you discovered the batch files?
Actually discovered it by accident because I deleted auto-exec bat. For those of you who are like not that old, and it was basically a startup script on DOS systems. So it was a DOS computer with Windows 3.11. Windows 3.11 wasn't even a genuine operating system. It was just like a layer on top of DOS. It wasn't actually an operating system. I think Windows 95 was the first real operating system made by Microsoft. So DOS 6.22, as far as I remember, had the startup script called auto-exec, automatically execute, I guess, bat, and I deleted it, and the computer won't start up. So I quickly kind of tried to learn, what is this file? What's the purpose of it? So I had to, well, there was no Google. So the only thing I could do was asking friends at my primary school. So just by fixing, I had to like discover what's the bat file and what's the purpose of it, that I can actually put several DOS commands in a single file. And it actually has a notion of if statements, which were really clumsy, but still. So that was actually my first encounter with programming, and that's kind of weird, but that's how it went. And then there was Turbo Pascal.
And you enjoyed that? Your experience with the auto-exec, sorry.
I enjoyed it to the point that I figured that I can run several commands at once, so I can automate stuff. And this was like a great experience, that the computer is not just for typing commands manually. And once again, this was DOS, so it was terminal only. You could run Windows as one of the programs on the DOS system. So that was quite an enlightening idea, that you can put several commands and then they are executed in a blink of an eye. And that's how I discovered that, the computer actually can do something more than just what I ask it for. I was truly amazed, how is it possible that computers can do so much with like so little hardware. So that I quickly realized how you can combine, how you can create larger programs from smaller pieces, like scripts and then programming.
Cool. And by the way, you also know about the config sys, right?
Yeah, I did. So there was config sys. There was like
exactly. So you're
there were actually two standards of executables. There was X files and COM files. And
exactly.
What's really amazing, that COM file was just a raw assembly. There was no header. There was no there was no metadata. It was just raw assembly from the first to last byte, and that was pretty cool. It would never be possible these days. But yeah, that's how it went. I was actually programming assembly as well for some time.
Wow, but after the your batch experience, what was the next programming language? So you mentioned Turbo Pascal. So you started right away with
Turbo Pascal, and it sounds kind of funny, but I was so extremely happy when I kind of figured out how to sort an array. I spent like numerous hours trying to figure out how do I have an array sorted. So I was like tackling or tinkering with different algorithms.
And you properly bubble sort, right? You found
and in the end, I came up with bubble sort.
Yeah.
And I was so happy, like I discovered this great algorithm, which didn't work for more than 1,000 elements or maybe 100 elements on that machine. But still, and I was kind of sad, like how come is it so slow? It works on my own. Well, I can say it works on my machine. It works on my piece of paper. But then I had to go to the university to actually discover what's the big O notation and why bubble sort is so bad. But still, for a child that was like 15 by that time, or I don't know, 17, that was something really cool. And I didn't have any materials, and I didn't have.
Wait a second.
Any internet.
So what you're saying?
Yep.
So after the school, you went home and just for enjoyment or for fun, you invented sorting algorithms, or what is the background? Because it sounds for me, like again, prodigy child. So.
Well, I was trying to develop something like a file browser using Turbo Pascal. So like going through the files, entering directories, and like just looking what are the contents of the file system. And it actually quite cool. I'm really sad I don't have the source code. but I badly needed a way to sort files. So that's how I invented bubble sort, just because I needed it.
Okay.
Not like
Okay.
I sat there with a piece of paper and I thought to myself, okay, let's invent a sorting algorithm.
This is what I thought. Like, this would be strange, but I understand the story, with the file browser. And why you wanted to build a file browser? I'm asking because about your motivation. You saw a movie, or how you got into programming.
I honestly don't remember. I think it was just like a useful tool that you can build using Turbo Pascal.
Okay.
My God, I was like 14 or 15 back then.
Yeah, still.
Sounds really strange.
But anyway, nowadays I don't think that the kids go home and implement a file browser. So there should be something interesting. So why you liked computers that much? This could be interesting.
Yeah, it was DOS operating system, so all you had was dir as for
okay,
files and
okay.
CD. So
okay.
And I think I maybe I wasn't aware of the tools like Norton Commander or something. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna do it this way. And yeah, I just had this feeling that I remember I also discovered recursion, because what I needed was searching directories recursively, so trying to find a file in subdirectories. And it somehow struck me that I can run the same procedure, because I think in Pascal it was called procedures. I can run procedure from itself in order to browse directories. So that was even the bigger aha moment than discovering bubble sort. So quite a few things occurred to me without kind of prior knowledge and without having any books or internet access, because I didn't have internet back then.
Yeah.
So these were really amazing times. And
so the file browser was your Hello World?
Yeah, sort of. So of course
cool.
I started with Hello World. It wasn't Haskell. I have this joke that when I was reading a Haskell book many years later, Hello World is actually in chapter 5, because first you have to learn what is a monad and how do you actually interact with input-output, which has side effects. So Hello World is actually a very complex problem in Haskell. But when it comes to Pascal,
so I mean the Haskell Haskell book has 6 chapters, right? And the 5th one was Hello World.
No, not really. But it's like one third of the book you actually start with Hello World, because previously you learn all the data structures, you learn how to the map filter and
so
people
are still complaining that Java is too complicated. But in Java you got Hello World on the first page, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Just kidding.
That's true. Yeah, well. I'll go back to the topic in just a second, but the problem with Java is that you have to type so many foreign words in the beginning, like it's public, static, void, main, system, out, print line, and probably just print line is familiar to people in sort of. But nevertheless, Java is much simpler.
Yeah, but this is not. I mean, I heard this, but I also learned programming, and I learned Java, and I learned C++. And for me, between C++ and Java was almost no difference. And in C++, I just memorized, I was, okay, it has to be main, so I memorized main and never ask why. And later I understood why. But it's not like it took me no days to think about Hello World. You spend 10 minutes thinking about this and problem solved,
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
it's not like it's a big deal. And people are doing, you cannot learn Java because you have typed so many words. Well, okay, you will have to type something. And and if you start with JavaScript, let's say in browser, you will also have to type at least script source and point to the source file. Otherwise, nothing happens. So it's not like you always need some bootstrap.
Yeah. I mean, there are languages that are optimized for Hello Worlds where you just type one line.
Visual Basic.
That's actually yeah, true. I never actually programmed in Visual Basic, by the way.
I a little bit, but I was completely confused.
Yeah.
So like for programmers, it's the same experience I had with Flash. I don't know whether you know Flash. And in Flash, I was constantly...
Yeah, I did.
I was constantly search for the source code, and this was only possible to write some source code in the keyframes. And Visual Basic was like, black magic. So how everything sticks together for me was like, I don't know. But back to you. So Turbo Pascal, what was your the one application you are most proud of in Turbo Pascal you've wrote, except the file browser? Was something else?
I don't remember much more about it, but I do remember that...
Then do the next language. What was the next language?
The next language was C++, and it was a bit later. I think it was somewhere in between high school and university. I wasn't actually very good at programming when I entered university. For example, I didn't know Java at all.
Mm-hmm.
But somewhere between high school and university, I was porting a game. I don't remember the name of it, but basically it was three-dimensional Tetris. So
Wow.
rather than having, I guess you can imagine it. So
Yeah.
rather than having 2D blocks, you had 3D blocks, and rather than collecting lines, you were collecting full surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
So 2D surfaces had to be placed.
A nice
I
idea,
actually found the
actually.
source code, and excuse me.
It's actually a nice idea. So I try to to visualize in my head, right? This could be
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
interesting game.
I think I was porting a game that I knew from my childhood. It was called Breakout.
Yes.
And I ported it to. Oh, you actually remember the name? Yeah.
I
So I
think
ported it
Breakout
to
or
open.
Arkanoid, they were the same, right? This was like there was a wall and there was a ball and it hit the wall, right? Or something like this.
Yeah. So in terms of Breakout, you basically saw a three-dimensional kind of a space, and you were trying to arrange blocks, and you could rotate them in 3 dimensions.
Okay,
So
this was something different. Mm-hmm.
the controls were quite confusing. I actually found the source code. I put it on my GitHub, but I never really managed to build it. So maybe someone listening to it can build it and see whether it still works. But it's really ancient. I think it's like 10 or 15 years old by now. So that was pretty big. I spent like a whole vacation, like 3 months straight, every single day doing programming it, including like well, we would call it artificial intelligence these days. So
Cool.
basically, the game could play itself.
Yeah, amazing. So you found, so you discovered AI per accident as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do one question: how much time do you spend during the vacations? Was it a full day? So like I don't know, 5 hours or 10 hours hiking straight?
That was totally crazy. I think I wasn't going anywhere during the vacation, and it was full like June, July, August or something, or July, August, September, whatever. And it was the whole day straight. So I was waking up, having breakfast, and then just doing programming. If I recall correctly, there were never such an intense time during my programming career that I would just wake up and do some programming for the whole day straight. It was very unhealthy, but I managed to actually deliver the game. I mean, I wasn't trying to publish it, but in the end, I managed to like publish a fully working game, and quite a few people played it.
Cool.
So yeah, kind of success.
Nice. Yeah, but healthy is very healthy because in July to August is the sun is too aggressive, so it's very bad for the skin. So you did your best, to remain healthy, right?
That's what I told to my parents, actually.
Yeah, perfect. So very good. So this is amazing. So how old were you? 16, 17?
At the time I developed this game, I think it was around 19, because
Wow.
that actually required like quite a bit of math, because it was OpenGL, so you had to do all these
Wow. Okay.
transformations and rotating cameras and so on.
Yeah, matrix transformations. So I think if the study started, so I had to do the matrix transformations and multiplications in my first year
Yes.
of computer science. So you were the genius with that, I guess, right?
Oh, I wouldn't say genius. All this stuff I had to rediscover, or I don't know, just figure out myself. But it was really painful. I believe these days I would develop this game like 10 times shorter. But still, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
Especially the AI part that I mentioned, that the bricks kind of knew what is the best place to put themselves, and that took me a while.
You did neural networks, or how you did it?
As far as I remember, so funny thing is that I didn't know about threads by that time, so I had just one thread, and the single thread was responsible both for drawing and for like doing all these computations.
So now you rediscovered Node.js, right? So it's one thread. So that's the next invention you did. Okay.
I was actually doing these days we would call it voluntarily preemption of a thread, or I don't know, or just yielding. So basically, my computation was tracking time, and if it took more than 10 milliseconds or 50 milliseconds, I don't remember, it was giving up, allowing the system to draw next frame, and then trying to continue the computation later on. So yeah, if we're continuing with this joke, you could say I discovered coroutines as well.
Very good.
But how did it work? When a new random piece was showing up on the screen, it was basically trying to fit itself in every single position using every possible rotation. So it was basically a brute force solution.
It was backtracing, I guess, right? So it just tried to went back and tried to I would call it backtracing, the backtracing algorithm.
Yeah, sure.
Was it something like backtracing?
Yeah. Well, it was a flat solution space because you have like a fixed number of places where you can put your block and fixed number of rotations. I think 8 different positions are possible. And then I applied some scoring algorithm, like how deep the block would go, would it not cover some empty spaces, and having the score, I would just choose the best one. Cool. And the hardest problem was to split time between doing these computations and actually drawing the frame. So what I mentioned earlier.
Very good. So, and this was in C++ and you were 19. So was it right before you studied?
Yes, I believe so.
So, what you studied then?
I was studying computer science in Warsaw University of Technology.
I think I was invited once. I was there. So I was in the Warsaw Java user group, and we went after the show, Java user group, to a pub or restaurant, and it is called like the Polish Figures for Kids. Wait a second. There was
it's Bolek or Lolek.
Yeah, exactly. So we went there and we discussed, what's
I know the place.
Yeah, what's new with Java, and there was I showed some Java services, and there were like huge amount of people. So we discussed what's new, how they can participate, and I remember the university was amazing because there are lots of Google ads come to work with us. So Google did some investment, what appeared to me. So, but it was like, I think 5 years ago or something, or 6 even.
Yeah, there are actually 2 universities in Warsaw. There's University of Warsaw and Warsaw University of Technology, which is called, I don't know if there's a German word like Polytechnic or something like that. Nevertheless, they are both actually pretty good in terms of like the education. So I was really happy I managed to get there. And yeah, that's where I learned Java. That was my first encounter with Java, believe it or not.
And you like that?
Yes, sort of. I was more like a C++ guy, to the point that at some point in time I was given an opportunity to have an internship in C++ or Java, and I wasn't really sure which one to choose because like both of these languages were kind of easy to grasp for me, and I chose Java, which was which kind of determined my whole future career, basically.
Interesting. So, with which Java version you started?
Let me think. The oldest Java I worked with was 1.1.
Wow.
And I believe I started with 1.4. It was just 1.5 was just about to kick off.
So it was 2005, 2004, I guess, right?
I started study. Could be like that. I started studying later on, but that new versions of Java don't come up so early, especially to the universities. So I think the work I've done at the university was 1.4 or 5.0 or whatever the version scheme is right now. So it was generics, and the world looked brighter. It wasn't that hard at the moment, but still it was AWT most of the time. It wasn't Swing.
And you enjoyed your study at the university, or it was waste of time?
Absolutely. There are so many discussions these days. Should you be studying information technology, or just learning from the internet or from some courses for a few months is enough? I don't have a particular opinion. However, I did enjoy my studies, and I do believe I learned a ton of useful stuff. For example, I know exactly how the computer works from the bottom. And from the bottom, I mean, what is electricity, what is resistance, what is a transistor, how do arithmetic logic unit, ALU, work. What is the CPU comprised of, how the caches work, and so on and so forth. So I know how every single layer works, at least superficially.
Cool.
How networking works, how logic gates work, and so on and so forth. So it was a great foundation. I can't say that learning calculus or derivatives or so much of linear algebra helped me in my career, or maybe matrix multiplication, but I was already past that.
Okay.
But still, I believe it was a great learning experience. And as I already mentioned, my master's thesis was about compilers. So I built a compiler for the toy language logo. And I thoroughly believe that it was time well spent.
Yeah. Question about Java. So what was your first application a little bit more complex or, evolved application you wrote you're proud of?
Oh God, let me think. It wasn't definitely not my first, not my second, and maybe not even the fifth application, but I do remember I wrote a chat application, a desktop chat application that was using RMI. Remote method invocation.
Yes.
To communicate, and it actually worked quite well. I believe people at the university were quite amazed that it works so easily. So RMI was the technology of the time.
Yeah, it was actually very easy to program, right? So this was nothing to do with Corba.
Yeah,
there's one liner, and you could just access an interface.
Yeah, so you could claim that remote procedure call is not the best way to communicate with the systems, but it was insanely simple. So.
Yeah.
You just had an interface, and that interface did all the network communication. So that was a big application that I did in Java. What else? I don't remember much more. Yeah, I don't really remember much more in Java. There wasn't any spectacular systems, but this one, this one.
Okay.
Actually taught me quite a lot. And I also remember there were these times when I was working for a company that really wanted people to, it was during university, I was working in a company that really wanted people to learn and have certificates. By the time it was Sun certificates.
Yeah.
So I have quite a few of them. I don't even mention them on my CV anymore because they are, well, more or less worthless at the moment. So it was Sun certified Java programmer, web component developer, business component developer. So it was basically basics of Java, XML, and EJB. So these three are pretty much worthless these days, but there was one of them. It was Sun certified Java developer, not a programmer, but Java developer.
And you have to develop an app, right? For that.
You actually had to develop an app, and people from Sun were doing a review, and that was actually a good learning experience. That was the moment when, for example, I realized that simple date format is not thread safe, which is a thing that many people don't realize even today. So that was a really worthy certificate and worthy exam. And the reason I'm mentioning it is that, well, they asked you to create an application, and it wasn't a naive application. It was basically a client server. I believe it was a database, so a simple database with a client code and a server part. And the server was supposed to be accessible both remotely and as an embedded system. So it took me quite a while to develop this application, but it was a good experience. I don't know if the certificate exists anymore, but if it is, it's money well spent.
Yeah, but the hardest was the Java programmer. I don't know in your time, but I did it at the very beginning, and there was like multiple choice questions, but you never knew how many answers are the right answers. So and they were really, this was really hard. So I actually failed the very first time. And then I was it's impossible. So I was actually, if I did the course, I could program Java actually fairly well, but it was really hard. So for instance, I remember one question, switch statement where default comes first. I never saw something in my source code. I would never write such a code.
Oh God!
Something like this, or I also remember.
And let me guess, one of the answers is it doesn't compile, and you have no
idea. It doesn't
matter.
It doesn't matter. The answer is it doesn't matter. You can write default first and cases later. Doesn't matter. But I didn't know this. Okay. For instance, this and the other one was, I remember, like you have the arrays, two-dimensional array, and there were the square brackets, and they were all over the place. And the question is which compiles. And I say no one writes such a code, so I have no idea. So and I reviewed my just afterwards, and I missed these pieces. But what happened? I learned that much for the programmer back then, that I knew Java exactly well because of that. So I knew all the corner cases. So then I passed the exam. And the problem was because so many students failed, they make it easier to pass later. But the first one was brutal. So for me, it was like a challenge. I would really like to do the course. And yeah, the developer was fun. I did actually everything because back then as a freelancer, I teach these courses as a preparation. So and then I did the exams just for fun. So I also have all the certificates, but I never had to apply anywhere. So no one saw them. But it's, they look nice, with the sun colors. And yeah, I had the architect from 1999. It was I thought most of the certificates I did was before 2000.
Oh wow, yeah,
cool. So now about your Java experience. So you did all the certificates during the study. Have you worked for a company during your study, or was it you just studied?
I started working for a company between the second and third year during my university, so quite early. It's also a funny story. I was given this task by one of the during one of the exams, showing not exams, but it was a task that was supposed to take me like a half year or something. It was algorithms, data structures, and the task was to implement finding the longest palindrome. If you don't know what palindrome is, it's basically a string that reads the same backwards and forwards. It's
like
ABA
EH cache.
or something.
EH cache.
Yeah, really, yeah. So the task was to find the largest palindrome in a real world text. So, for example, War and Peace by Tolstoy or something. And did he put some palindromes in there just by sheer coincidence? And this is actually a non-trivial task if you want to do it in a non-square, like a ON square or ON cube time. So this task was supposed to take me like a couple of months to do some research and implement some really complex data structure. But it turned out that if you look carefully and if you like calculate all the statistics and if you do the math, it turns out that the most naive algorithm works just okay with human texts. So by human, I mean text written by people, not some just random input. So for random input, my algorithm was n square, but for normal texts, my algorithm worked just fine with a linear complexity. And it turned out that my final project was 3 lines of code, and I'm serious about it. It was 3 lines of code and 10 lines of math that was explaining why these 3 lines of code are actually behaving properly. And the guy who was looking at my solution, he was like quite amazed and quite shocked about it. To the point that he said that, you know what, my father has a company and it was a real estate company and they need an IT system. So would you like to work for him? And that was my first company, basically. And it was in Java. It was C++ in Java.
Nice. And you worked directly for the company or you become a freelancer?
I believe I was a freelancer. It was mostly working from home or working from dormitory or whatever I lived there. It was definitely part-time, but I learned quite a lot about Java back then. For example, it was my first encounter with Spring. It was my first encounter with network programming, with databases. So that was a really large amount of experience I got there.
Cool. So which commercial projects you did during university or afterwards? So what was your path with Java after the university? When actually where your university commitment ended? So was it in 2005-06, something like this?
You're asking when did I graduate?
When you finished your university?
So I actually had to go to my LinkedIn page because I don't remember.
No, roughly.
I think it was. Let me see. So I was like the further I was at my university, the more I was doing some actual work. But I graduated in 2009. Yeah, I just checked it.
Okay.
So that's when I ended. But back then I was like doing almost full-time work at software houses and some freelance work. So cool. It was kind of smooth. It wasn't like I'm graduating and now I'm starting my real work. The transition was smoother.
So what you did after university? You still kept freelancing? Or?
Let me think. No, I was working for a software house, and the software house was making software for a large telecom in Poland. There were 3 large telecoms in the whole country, so that was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also working for a company that was doing some reporting software, some really complex reporting software. I was doing an internship back then. But the software house was, I worked there for like 3 years, I believe,
Okay.
starting somewhere in the middle of university. The software house was a great experience as well. I learned a ton, and they had legacy systems, new systems written in EJB 2.0, written in Spring, written in all these really weird technologies. I remember there was, that's a funny story. We used to have so many systems, and they were written in such non-structured way, I would say, with no organization, no agile back then, that we had some systems where we simply didn't have source code anymore. It was just on someone's laptop, and this person wasn't working anymore, and we lost source code for one of our systems. So what do you do back then? Well, someone found an older copy of the source code on his computer, and he wasn't sure whether the old copy of the source code is actually recent, so whether it has all the changes. So what they did is that he compiled the source code into a jar, then he decompiled it back to the source code, which was, of course, completely different from the source code perspective. But he also took the jar file and he decompiled it as well using the same tool. And if you decompile 2 jar files into source code using the same tool with the same version of the tool, it was JAD, Java Decompiler.
Yeah, exactly.
JAD. Yeah. So if you decompile 2 jar files using the same tools, even if they are slightly different, they should produce more or less the same source code, even if the jar files were compiled using different Java or so on. And after all this process, he figured that, yeah, indeed, he has the correct source code, the original source code, because after compiling and decompiling the source code, and after decompiling the jar file that we had on production, we came up with the same decompiled version. So this is the extent you have to go through to actually manage the chaos that was going on there. But
so we did similar practices caused by different problems. So, and some of my clients had projects with lots of external dependencies, and they didn't maintain the dependencies, and some of the dependencies died, and there was a bug, and we had to fix the bug. But the framework just died. There was in one case we found Apache Attic, that it was at the Attic, but it was actually nowhere available, not even in Internet Archives, nowhere. So we had to decompile the jar, then fix the bug and recompile the jar, and this was then our source code. So this was a very similar story with different causes.
Yeah, so I think if I think about it today, when we have continuous delivery, continuous deployments, all the software craftsmanship movement, it was like, I'm really shocked what we did back then. But it worked and it brought money, so
yeah,
that's how the business worked back then. I would never try to do it again, but it was a necessity. So what can you do?
So so you work for different companies, and why you started to talk at conferences? Also, you mentioned briefly that you also attended the InfoShare conference. When is your first talk?
It was actually a Warsaw Java user group, so the one that you attended as well. So the one that you spoke to there as well. I honestly don't know. Maybe I'm kind of an introvert, so I wanted to circumvent that and just trying to stand in front of the people.
Interesting.
I wouldn't say I have a talent for that, but somehow people like to listen to me, and they kind of understand it in a way, but I didn't know it back then. I honestly don't remember. I think I had a topic and I thought to myself, okay, let's share it with the other people, and that's how it started. When I was looking at, I have this tiny little table where I collect all my talks, and it approaches 70 or 80 different talks throughout all these years. But my first one was 10 years ago.
So you speak that much? I didn't know that. So
yeah, I do.
Okay, so what was your first talk you remember actually?
I do remember it. I can Google it up quickly, but I do remember
No,
it.
but
It
which?
was about
Yeah, about what exactly?
my very, very, very first talk was actually internal. It happened at my company where I worked for, the one that I already described, and it was about aspect J,
Okay.
which is not really a simple topic.
No.
I actually needed to
Join
use
cuts, point
aspect.
cuts, and
Exactly.
yeah.
You know what? I actually had to use aspects like last week for
Okay.
the first time since many, many years. And I actually went back to the slides I created for this very first talk, and they were still relevant, which tells a lot about the technology, that it's so stable. Nevertheless, it also tells a lot how useful it is if I go back to it every 3 or 4 years. I'm not using Aspect that much these days. So that was my first talk, but my first public talk was about largely forgotten database called Project Voldemort.
From Facebook. This would be NoSQL. NoSQL.
I don't Facebook or Netflix or one of these big companies. I think it was written by Ben Christensen, who later wrote RxJava, which is pretty amazing. So it was basically an open source implementation of key value store from Amazon. So I did a talk about it.
Why you did it? So you had to use the database, or why you talked about that?
No, and I was actually fairly open about it. I'd never used it in production, even earlier or later on, which is pretty sad state of conference talks in general. I just found this project and I was playing with it for quite some time to discover like all the nooks and crannies that it has, all the advantages and disadvantages. So I thought, okay, it's a cool project. Let me share it with my very limited experience with other people. The truth is, and what I already mentioned, the truth is that I never worked with it either earlier or later on. And from the time perspective, it's not a good idea to have a talk about something that you have absolutely no experience with.
Yeah, this is what I'm asking. So how you get into the Voldemort? Because what I am usually doing, I'm just talking about what I am doing in projects, so they don't have to prepare a lot, and this works. But if I will talk, about something, let's say now Turbo Pascal, so I could do this, but I have to learn Turbo Pascal first, and I have no stakes in it, so I have no project experience. I have to remember what I did 20 years ago. So this would be a different story.
Yeah, the problem is that I think it was around 2010, and in order to surface at a large conference, you had to do a talk about something, sexy. So this was the new thing, and it was something that not many people knew about.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, it's an interesting database, and I'm gonna share my very, very limited experience about it.
But why you did it? You wanted to find another job, or what? I mean, you worked already for a company.
Absolutely no. And I don't think I ever did anything publicly to find another job, even though, for example, I used to be extremely active on Stack Overflow. And even today, even though I'm not logging there for like 5 years straight, I'm still among the top users because I have so many answers there. But still,
how good were you at Stack Overflow? Were you top what?
Let me quickly check. I think I'm like top 0.02% of people. So it's like top 1,000, top 10,000, something like that.
Okay.
My reputation was approaching 300,000. So if you're like if you know what Stack Overflow is, you know that it's quite a lot.
I know what Stack Overflow is, but I have no idea whether 300K is good or bad. So
okay. So the best people have like 1 million, but it's still extremely a lot.
Okay.
But nevertheless, I never did it because I wanted to find the job or I wanted to impress someone. It was just like a hobby.
Okay.
Same with conferences. So, long story short, I believe it's just like a cool thing for me. I really enjoy talking to people and I enjoy preparing for the talk. And you know what they say: if you want to really understand something, try to explain it to someone.
This is true. This is very true. You're absolutely right. Yeah. This is sometimes I misuse stuff, to become better in something in it. Yeah. Very good. So basically, after your university, you worked for various software houses with applied various hacks and made your clients happy, and you stick with the company until now, or what's your story after the university?
There was a ton of companies in between. So there was a software house.
Mm-hmm.
There was a really tiny startup in Norway. I used to live in Norway for 3 years. And it
Wow.
was a
Okay.
great,
Was also
great
Java
time. Yeah.
startup?
Yeah, it was a Java startup doing some cryptography and doing some they were actually doing some really really cool stuff. They were trying to circumvent counterfeits in medicine. So it turns out that a lot of medicines, especially in Asia, Africa, and such places, a lot of medicines are counterfeited. So you can find non-genuine medicines that are basically like 10 times cheaper to produce, do
Mm-hmm.
not have the same effect, but they
Mm-hmm.
are sold even in pharmacies. So what this Norwegian startup was doing, and I believe they are still doing, they were trying to prevent it by printing some unique codes on each and every blister or each and every box of medicine.
Okay.
And that was kind of a large volume of data. And once again, it was a place where I learned a lot. It was back then it was a really small startup. I was one of the 3 developers.
Cool.
So I was.
How did you find them? So I mean, you lived in Warsaw. How to find a startup in Norway? So what was the story behind?
When I joined them, I was a 3rd developer. So they had 2 developers. One was the CTO, and the second one was also Polish.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one Norwegian guy and one Polish guy who started working there by sheer coincidence. And they were looking for a 3rd developer. And I think the Polish guy suggested that they should post an advertisement in some Polish government site that's used for looking for employed people.
Mm-hmm.
So basically a government agenda. And I found an announcement there. So this is the last place where you would look for a job, especially when you're a programmer in Poland. But that was a total coincidence as well. And I think they contacted me a year after I sent a CV, so I totally forgot about them.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it became one of my best programming experiences.
Cool.
And also my best life experiences, because living in Norway is totally different than living in Warsaw or anywhere else in Europe.
So you enjoyed the time?
Yeah, absolutely. I learned to ski, for example. Every single week I was going for skiing for a whole day.
Cool.
It was absolutely amazing.
Alpine skiing or cross country?
Downhill skiing.
Downhill, okay. Cool. So you were in Norway, and then you did various works on various companies. And what are you doing right now?
Now I'm working at an e-commerce platform called Allegro, which is really, really big in Poland.
Is this just in Poland or is it international?
It's just in Poland, so
Okay.
It's not a very well-known brand internationally. It tried to enter different markets, but it turned out that Poland is kind of enough for us at the moment. But I believe it's the 2nd largest e-commerce in Europe.
Cool.
And it actually serves a lot of traffic.
What is the first in Europe?
Amazon, I guess.
In Europe, okay. Amazon is okay.
Yeah, in Europe.
Yeah, okay. But Amazon is not European. I mean, according to the revenue, I guess, right? What do you because Amazon is not a European company.
Regarding revenue or profits, we could be first, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an economist.
No.
So
I just was curious. What is the
large,
first,
yeah.
European e-commerce company? Because I thought Amazon is not European, but
that's true. We could be the largest, but don't.
Okay, so you are one of the largest. Let's say that. Okay, so
yeah, definitely.
And I saw the Allegro everywhere at Polish conferences. This is why I'm asking, what is it actually? Because I didn't know what Allegro actually does. Okay.
Yeah. So once again, what was the question?
No question. Just I saw the Allegro all over the place in Poland, and
we're doing a
various
lot of
conferences.
Yeah,
Exactly. So now I know what Allegro is doing. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So now you're working for Allegro, and what they are doing there?
I'm a software developer, so I'm still doing software basically. I somehow managed not to go the management ladder.
Very good
so far.
Is it hard is it hard to keep coding, or is it really tempted, to be the PowerPoint fighter?
At this point in time, it's just my personal choice. So I was like, I told very briefly and I told very clearly that I don't want to go this path, but we'll see what future brings. But for the moment, I'm really happy with what I do. And yeah, we're basically doing software development. Allegro used to be a single monolith company with a large PHP monolith in center. It's not like that anymore. A few years ago, people decided that they want to transform to. What do you think? What's the next big architecture they chose like 5 years ago?
5 years ago. So I guess it was microlith and monorepo, right? No, microservices, I think.
Yeah, obviously microservices. We went like full microservices. So at the moment, the last time I checked, there were like 800 microservices on production. And contrary to many companies that are doing microservices, they actually make sense to the.
This will be the next question. I cannot imagine that 800 could make sense, but if you're saying, I believe you. So,
yeah, the thing is that also around 5 years ago, we invited Eric Evans, the creator of DDD, to our company for a few days, and he split our domain into subdomains or bounded contexts. And that's how we managed to kind of keep the chaos leashed to some extent. So we have so many services, but still it's not a total chaos. So it's not like every service talks to another service and you have absolutely no idea what's going on. Services are maintained by different teams. And
how Eric Evans is able to split your domain to subdomains? Because what I'm usually saying, so people ask me also about microservices, and I can help, but the problem is I'm not an expert in e-commerce. I'm not an expert in anything which involves business, because I never spend too much time on a single company. And to split the one monolith into microservices, well, you really need to know deep knowledge how the application operates and how the team operate. So what probably Eric did, it asked lots of questions and picked the business experts from Allegro who helped him, right? Otherwise, it is actually impossible for someone outside to split a monolith into subdomains. At least is my opinion.
Well, I guess there are few reasons. So first of all, he spent like a week there with us, so he had quite some time to realize what's going on. And secondly, it's an e-commerce, so it's not some completely exotic business. It's a system that sells stuff from different deliverables. So you have payments, you have search, you have listing, you have showing items, you have frauds, and so on and so forth. So it's superficially, it's actually a fairly standard system. So that's how we started. And I believe these are actually one of the few bounded contexts we have, like the large ones.
Okay.
So it's not such a big, it was an extremely large effort, but it's not something not doable within a reasonable amount of time.
And now it's Java or still PHP?
Now it's definitely Java. It's more and more Kotlin these days, but it's JVM most of the time. So there are tons of services, and seems to work well. I haven't got lost during my career at Allegro with like what this service is doing, why is it calling this one, and so on and so forth. We are deploying service mesh these days to actually have better observability. So it seems to be quite mature at the moment, and we don't regret this.
Which one is
we did some mistakes. It's Envoy, as far as I know.
Envoy, okay.
So we are quite happy with the architecture we have so far. Of course, it has some issues, but from the developer experience and from things that we managed to learn, it actually works quite well. And even though it's an extremely large distributed system, we don't have some really big outages. So we learned quite a lot about timeout, circuit breakers, asynchronous processing, and so on and so forth.
And what's your role? Are you architect or a developer?
Just a developer. So I'm a senior developer.
Senior developer,
it's called these days. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And what's interesting right now is so I posted a correction of a slide for Eclipse conference because I had several typos. And what I wrote is like, you are not Netflix. And And your opinion or your feedback was you had almost exactly the same slide at conferences. But what's interesting is, in your case, this slide doesn't hold. So what most of my projects are not that massive than yours. Most of my projects are, I would say, we don't have, such requirements for scalability or transactions per second. So rather boring, and people still try to apply, rocket science to simple problems. But in your case, I would say, this is my slide. Like, you are not Netflix. You are almost like not Netflix, but at least almost like an Amazon, right? So I mean, it makes absolute sense for micro optimize your architecture. This is what was my slide about. And in my projects, we focus more on developer experience, simplicity, and maintainability, even if we get some CPU or memory hit.
Yeah, my slide that you're mentioning was from a talk I gave about reactive programming, and it was a grumpy talk. I was most of the time I was claiming that you don't really need reactive programming in your project because you are not Netflix. I even called it a Netflix point. It's the point where your scale is so big that you probably need reactive programming, but most of the time you're not passing that point. You don't have such volumes. You don't have so many requests per second. So I'm really happy, and it's probably the first time in my career that I actually kind of crossed the Netflix point. So I do need reactive programming. I do need these architecture optimizations. I do need asynchronous processing, but most of the time, this investment is simply not worth it. So by investment, I mean you have to learn these techniques. You have to understand these tools that are so foreign, so exotic, and there's no payoff because your system doesn't serve tens of thousands of requests per second. So you won't see the benefits of, for example, reactive programming or whatever you were mentioning in your talk. You won't see these benefits, but you will pay the price of maintenance, and you will pay the price of really hard to debug and hard to understand system. So that was basically my point. Do not try to use all these new shiny tools if you don't have to, because you're going the microservices path, or you're going the reactive path, not because you want to, but because you have to. And it's the necessity, necessity should be the reason, not the fact that you want to try new tools.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. This is amazing. This is exactly what I am saying. So just, write the simplest possible code and you are set. So there is no reason, to try to imitate Netflix, Allegro, or Amazon, or whoever, because your business is usually not as big as they are. And most of the companies try to hire a new developer, so they talk about shiny frameworks, to get new fresh blood as developer. And this is why they are doing this. It's not like they try to help, businesses with new patterns.
Yeah, actually, before our talk, I realized that I was reading your book like 10 years ago, or maybe less, whatever. And you were, it was rethinking.
Best practices.
Help me with the title. Yeah, exactly. So in this talk, in this book, you had a chapter about making a system for counting statistics for entering your website. So basically counting page hits. And for each page hit, you did a separate service that you were calling using RESTful API. And back then I thought to myself, wow, this is not optimal. I mean, counting when you're entering a page, you're probably doing it so many times per second. How on earth is it going to be scalable? This is just nonsense. And after so many years, I realized that this was actually a good idea, because for your particular problem at hand, it's perfectly sufficient. And RESTful API is not that bad in that case, and it's so extremely simple. So it was so many years ago, and I realized that, as long as you're not Netflix, this is probably the right tool for the job.
The funny story is that the service is running for 10 years, and 4 weeks ago, I just rewrote it with Quarkus just for fun. This was in half a day. And now it runs as well as before. It's no difference, except it consumes half of memory and starts in 1 second or something. It is what you read in the book is still in production on my blog. It still counts statistics, and it got even simpler and simpler. So it's interesting. So now
And
the deal. You are
sorry. So another funny story is that you wrote it to Quarkus, so it consumes half a memory and starts in 1 second. Do you really care?
no.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
care, but I just wanted to do this because it was my own project, and in some clients ask me about the numbers, and I cannot just reveal numbers for my clients because of NDAs. So if I have a service, this is my service, so I now have the numbers, and if someone asks me, so I can give the numbers. So I don't care, but it was nice to watch that it starts fast. But the problem is my whole server is that fast that I can reboot everything in 10 seconds. So it really doesn't matter at all what I'm doing there. But I had 5 hours time, and this was like your sorting involvement. I just want, why not rewrite today, my service to Quarkus? Just go with it, and I did it, and it works. Worked.
Yeah, but that's the point. You played with it, and it was a great experience.
I just played,
experience.
And we use Quarkus in other projects where it comes with benefits. So was not like no waste of time. It was somehow I was involved with Quarkus a little bit.
Yeah.
Now we have 1 hour. So here's the deal. We have no time to speak about the interesting parts. It's a bit too long. So we will stop here. But I would re-invite you and talk exclusively, if you like, about reactive programming, yes or no, and all this stuff you like with, and we can also talk about Quarkus or whatever you like. Is it a deal?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great time.
So I will re-invite you probably January or February or whenever. So and try to do without the introduction and just talk exclusively about the interesting topics. So where people can find you and blog, Twitter, LinkedIn, or whatever you like.
So if you're Polish, it's going to be simpler. My last name is Nurkiewicz, so nurkiewicz.com, and that's where I publish articles rather infrequently. You can find me on Twitter as well. It's T as in Tomasz, T Nurkiewicz as well. I'm publishing some stuff there as well. And you can find me on some conferences. I believe I'll be at JFocus in February. So looking forward to see you.
What topic?
That's another interesting part. I'm talking about Unicode, and I'm talking. So basically the very fundamental talk, but I wanna tell people how hard it is, even though all the people think that Unicode is simple.
And the remaining topic, ACS logo.
No, what is it?
It is an open source free at least implementation of logo on Apple.
Oh, okay.
And the cool story is I play with it. Just this was accident. I didn't want to interrupt you with the logo stuff, but I play with it, and you have nice integration with the operating system, so you can speak and do more than just go back and forth and rotate. It's called ACS logo, and I printed the whole documentation just for fun because I wanted to look on it. And ACS or ACS, what is something? I will put it to the show notes. But you have to look Apple, Mac, and ACS logo, and it comes and it works right away. It just comes with nice editor, and you can do a lot more than just what we did back then. You get nice operating system integration as well.
Oh, fantastic! I just became a father, so it's something I would definitely use too.
If you just became a father, you will probably have 2 weeks or month
Still some time, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So I will really like to re-invite you again and talk about deeper about the microservices challenges, because this also is what I'm doing, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, fantastic. Looking forward to it.
So thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.